The silence within the Great Pyramid of Giza was not an empty silence. It was a heavy, ancient thing, thick with the weight of 4.5 millennia. It was a silence that swallowed sound and breathed out mystery. For Dr. Aris Thorne, an archaeologist whose reputation was built on the bones of dead empires, that silence had become a personal adversary. He stood deep within the king's chamber, the air cool and still, his hand resting on the colossal granite sarcophagus that had been empty for longer than most civilizations had existed. It was here, in this precise spot, that the official history of the pyramid ended and Aris's obsession began. The history books will tell you that the Great Pyramid was built as a tomb for the Pharaoh Khufu around 2560 BC. A monumental feat of engineering that reigned as the tallest man-made structure in the world for over 3,800 years. They will tell you about the estimated 2.3 million limestone blocks, each weighing an average of 2.5 tons, hauled into place with a precision that defies modern explanation. They will speak of celestial alignments, of the pyramid's 4 sides almost perfectly facing the cardinal directions, a geographical fluke so statistically improbable it whispers of intent, not accident. But what the history books cannot tell you, what they stubbornly refuse to account for, is the shadow story, the one etched not in hieroglyphs but in the negative space of the evidence. The one Aris had pieced together from a lifetime of dusty scrolls, star charts, and a single anomalous artifact found not in Egypt but in a forgotten box in a museum basement in Cairo. A small obsidian scarab that hummed with a cold, unnatural energy when the moon hit it at a certain angle. This is not the story you know. This is the story of the vein of Geb, the reason the pyramid was truly built, and the terrifying secret it was designed not to entomb, but to imprison. The journey to this moment began not in the sun-scorched sands of Giza, but in the lush, fever-drenched jungles of the Amazon, years earlier. Aris was part of a team investigating a pre-Columbian site, a city of stone that seemed to have been abandoned overnight. In a sealed chamber beneath a stepped pyramid that eerily mirrored those in Mesoamerica and Egypt, his team found a mural. It depicted not local gods, but a familiar 4-sided structure, a pyramid, with a beam of light shooting from its apex towards a constellation the local shaman identified as the jaw of the sky serpent, what Aris knew as Orion. Beside the pyramid was a symbol, a single vertical line with 5 smaller lines branching off it, like a stylized tree or vein. The local tribespeople called it the vein of Geb, the earth bone, and they feared it. They believed it was a conduit of primordial power, a ley line of cosmic energy that pulsed at specific points on the globe, and that the stone mountain in the desert land was built to tap into it, to harness its energy for a purpose so terrible their oral histories dared not speak its name. Aris, a man of science, dismissed it as syncretic mythology, a fascinating but fanciful coincidence. That was until he found the scarab. The scarab was unremarkable at first glance, catalogued simply as unidentified black stone, pre-dynastic, and left to gather dust. But Aris, chasing a lead on trade routes, felt drawn to it. He noticed its carvings were not of any known Egyptian style. The lines were sharper, more geometric, almost crystalline. That night, working late, a sliver of moonlight pierced the high window of his temporary office and fell upon the scarab. It began to vibrate, emitting a low, subaudible hum that made his teeth ache. A faint, intricate pattern of blue light glowed across its surface, the same vein of Geb symbol from the Amazonian mural. In that moment, Aris's rational world fractured. The pyramid was not an isolated marvel. It was a node in a global, ancient network, a machine of unimaginable scope. He dedicated his life to uncovering the truth, a pursuit that cost him his university position, his marriage, and any semblance of a normal life, branding him a pariah in mainstream Egyptology, a fool chasing Indiana Jones fantasies.
But now, inside the king's chamber, with the humming scarab hidden in his pocket, he knew he was right. The standard tomb theory was a facade, a comfortable lie told by academics who lacked the pieces to see the whole, terrifying picture. The pyramid's internal structure was all wrong for a tomb. The descending passage, the ascending passage, the grand gallery, the so-called Queen's Chamber, they weren't passages for funeral processions. They were components of an engine. The grand gallery, with its colossal corbelled walls and mysterious stone benches, wasn't a ceremonial hallway. He believed it was a resonance chamber, a massive amplifier. His theory, built on decades of fringe research and his own cross-continental discoveries, was that the pyramid was a geomechanical power plant and a stellar synchronizer. The vein of Geb was a real geological and metaphysical phenomenon, a concentrated flow of telluric energy. The pyramid, built on the most potent node of this vein, was designed to harvest this energy, focus it through its precise geometry and internal chambers, and use the gravitational pull of the stars in Orion's belt, specifically aligned with the pyramid's southern shafts during its construction, to open a gateway or to power something immense. But power what? The answer came from the most forbidden of texts, a copy of a scroll stolen from a secret compartment in the Alexandria Library before its final burning, a text attributed to the legendary architect of the pyramid, the vizier Imhotep's even more ancient predecessor, a figure known only as the Sand Scribe. The scroll spoke of a time before the pharaohs, when a race of beings, the Neteru, sometimes translated as gods, but more accurately meaning principles or forces, walked the earth. They taught humanity astronomy, agriculture, and engineering. But one faction of the Neteru, the Sekhem, sought to use the vein of Geb not for enlightenment, but to draw power from a destructive, chaotic dimension adjacent to our own, a place the scroll called the Sea of Chaos. The pyramid was the keystone in a planetary lock, built by the benevolent Neteru and their human allies to seal the breach the Sekhem had created, to cap the vein of Geb and prevent the Sea of Chaos from flooding into our reality and unmaking it. The empty sarcophagus wasn't meant for a body. It was the central capacitor, the heart of stone, designed to hold the stabilized energy and maintain the seal for eternity. The pyramid wasn't a tomb. It was a prison cell, and humanity had been living blissfully unaware in its courtyard for 4,500 years. Aris's hands trembled as he placed the obsidian scarab into a barely perceptible depression on the side of the granite sarcophagus. It was a key. The scarab, created by the Sekhem, was a failsafe, a way to destabilize the lock from the outside. The humming intensified, vibrating up through the soles of his feet. The massive stone blocks around him seemed to groan, a deep subterranean sound that was not of shifting sand or settling stone, but of waking machinery. The air crackled with static, and the faint, dry smell of the chamber was replaced by the metallic tang of ozone. The hieroglyphs on the walls, usually static and silent, began to cast long, dancing shadows in a light that had no source. He had done it. He had activated the ancient machine. But as a low rumble built deep within the earth, and a seam of brilliant actinic blue light, the exact color of the scarab's glow, shot across the ceiling of the chamber, etching the vein of Geb's symbol into the very air, Aris was gripped by a cold, gut-wrenching terror. He had been so focused on proving the pyramid's true purpose, he had never stopped to consider a more horrifying possibility. What if the lock wasn't just a historical artifact? What if it was still active, still holding back something that clawed and scraped and hungered from the other side? And what if, in his arrogant quest for truth, He had just begun to turn the key. The heavy silence of the pyramid was gone, replaced by a deafening hum that was not a sound, but a presence. And it was ancient, and it was very, very